I was just asked, how do you make a fan brush, or really any kind of brush in ArtRage? That's one of the great things about ArtRage. It's easy to make brushes quickly, and you can see here's my list of custom brushes right here. You have a lot of different ones in here that you can use, so like this feathers brush and so forth, and different textures. Now, really, you can take and play around with these and get the different brushes that you need. So you can also go in and really tweak and adjust how everything is set up, and that's kind of what I did here. But let me show you just kind of the basics. So this evergreen brush that I have here makes a fairly good fan brush look, in which most of the time if you're using a fan brush, you're trying to get something either like a evergreen tree. So if you're trying to get something set up just quickly, and what I usually do with these is I'll lay it out, and then I'll just kind of keep building layers on top of it and kind of keep going from there. So you can see how you build it up with that quickly. So that's kind of how I do it, and that's really the way I paint anyway, is just building in layers. But let me show you how to do this. So you go into Brush Designer. Basically you bring up the custom brush here, and then you have the settings window showing. You click on Brush Designer, and that brings up this one here. So you can see that I've got, now this head right here is actually from the nature ones. Okay, I didn't make that. The same for this one right here. So if you want to change this, and really a good way to start is find one of these ones that are included with ArtRage, click on them, then click Brush Designer and use that as your starting point. So you'll basically will load two different images in here for the head of your brush. Okay, so these will combine to make this image. Okay, and give you that kind of a look. So you can test it here. So if you want to do that, you just click on this, you click load brush head, and then you would be able to just simply go to ambient, go to ArtRage, which I haven't done this in a little bit, so give me just a second here to remember actually where I have it. Let me see, I think, yeah, right here. Resources, content, you have brush bitmaps right here, and you'll see, like, for example, here's the nature one. You can change the icons and see what they look like. So you can see these here, and you'll notice, like, for example, let me go back in here, see that one is that one. So I just loaded that and then I inverted it. Okay, so you would just load any of these ones that you have, like any of these shapes. Again, I find it's best to give them the icons so you can kind of see what they look like. You can also save these. You can create a black and white image and then save it, and then from there be able to make your own brush that comes in here. So you would just basically save it as a JPEG, and then you'd be able to see it. So basically you figure out whatever you want your first image to be, your first texture. You add that in there, and then it loads it. Sometimes it will come in loaded like that. Okay, if you use that, it gives you that square stamp. See how that's kind of, because it's just repeating, this is all it's doing. So I always will go back and invert it, and then you can add a second one here, and what that does is just piles them on top of each other and affects the overall end look of the piece. And so really you just want to play around with it. So once you get roughly how you want this to look, okay, then you can start playing with the spacing. So like, say for example I wanted to do this, see how far apart it brings it, and sometimes this does this where it doesn't show up that well, but anyway, that's the spacing. Because remember, each time it does this, a brush tool in ArtRage, or really any program, is just a stamp. It's just stamping it. And so you can say, okay, how far apart do I want it? What, how dark do I want it to come on? Most of the time I tend to play around with these so they're not 100%. How much do I want it to twist and turn is going to be the jitter. Do I want it to randomly rotate when it starts? Do I want it to follow the stroke of my stylus as I'm doing stuff? What kind of grain size do I want? So you can play around with all of these, and really you can run down this rabbit hole for a while and doing all that. And then you can come in here and change things like, okay, what's the opacity? Does it taper off at the end? Does it taper off? What is the bias stuff? I'm not going to go through all these, but it basically just play around with them. Just, get an idea for them. Is it going to be in eraser mode by default? Is it going to pick up the color underneath it? If so, how much does it pick it up? When does it refresh? When you take the stylus off the tablet, does it refresh it automatically? Or does it not refresh it all the way? In other words, would you still have some of that color? So it'd be a dirty brush. That kind of stuff. So all of this you can play around with here. Again, you can add in other stuff. Okay, do I want it to pick up color? Yes. Do I want it to apply paint texture? Yes or no? I usually go with no. I don't want the shadow of it to be there. I don't like that most of the time. But you can play around with it. So then anyway, once you get all this set how you want, you just basically, you're going to click new preset, tell it what group it's going to be in, give it a name, and you're done. And really it's that simple. So the main thing with this is, like I said, start with one of these that you think looks kind of like what you want it to be, or similar, and then from there go in, just go over here, click Brush Designer, and start playing around with these. Most of the time that's what I do. I just change these and then I just slightly adjust these. So that's all you got to do with it. So it's a pretty simple process. It just takes some playing around, and that's the main thing with any of this, is just play around with it and get an idea for what you like and what you don't. And then from there you can make your own brushes. And again, if you wanted to make one, like say for example you were trying to make a brush, so what I would do, I would come into like Everlasting Oil, and I would really just kind of do out a shape. Then I would select this and export it as a JPEG, and then you can save it somewhere and then just load that into Brush Designer, that image. And you can really, the best way to do is set your canvas to like a 500 by 500 square, and so you've got a 500 by 500 square that you're working in. Do all your stuff in here, save that. So in other words, you don't have this big canvas like I have here, like this. This wouldn't be any good. All the brush heads are square, okay? And then you just design within that square, save it, export it as a image file for JPEG, black and white only, and then from there you can make the brush that you want. So hopefully that helps. If not, just leave me a comment below and I'll do my best to clarify. Thanks.